As you can see from the intro, the comparative investment and complexity in constructing an oil rig in the middle of an ocean or lake is more difficult and expensive than setting up oil rigs over inland oil wells. The risks of oil spills and leaks in water have enormous expenses to rectify and serious environmental penalties. In contrast, our Orogrande assets are inland over 132,000 acres of unpopulated desert land. In the event of an oil spill, the same risks exist but are substantially less likely and more easily fixed. Large oil reservoirs have been confirmed in the Orogrande Basin, and additional 5 wells need to be drilled by the end of the 31st of March 2023. On the 23rd of January 2023, the NBH board filed an S1 application which offered 40 million NBH common stock to Roth Capital to act as our placement agent to find institutional accredited investors. I was able to better understand the S1 by going back and reading the 8K application filed on the 27th of December 2022. The attached exhibits included the merger and promissory note agreement. This video provides my interpretation of how the merger was conducted between NBH, Hudspeth, Wolfbone, MergeCo, McCabe, and MPC. These are the main parties to this agreement. Please pay careful attention to these facts. Initially, McCabe wholly owns Wolfbone and MPC. What is not clearly mentioned here at the beginning of the agreement is that NextBridge Hydrocarbons will be creating a subsidiary called NBH MergeCo LLC, which will wholly own Hudspeth Operating LLC, which will end up wholly owning Wolfbone Investments LLC. And therefore, NextBridge Hydrocarbons Inc. indirectly owns all the Orogrande assets as the parent corporation. The Orogrande assets are being consolidated into Wolfbone LLC, and then Wolfbone LLC is being acquired by Hudspeth, which is owned by NBH MergeCo LLC, which is owned by NextBridge Hydrocarbons Incorporated. The Orogrande assets are defined on page 29 as Wolfbone's undivided interests, free of encumbrances, in and to the oil and gas leases covering the contract area, including records, titles, deeds, equipment, pipelines, facilities, tax records, and all tangible property on the Orogrande land. Interestingly, this agreement covers the rights to all other minerals, ores or substances of value whether or not generally produced from a wellbore in conjunction with the production of oil and gas. This includes but is not limited to sulfur, lignite, coal, uranium, thorium, iron, geothermal steam, water, carbon dioxide, and helium. My research has found that Orogrande region is known to have rare earth minerals. But this is a topic I will make a separate video about later on. Recital 1 states, Wolfbone Investments LLC is owned entirely by the owner Gregory McCabe, and Wolfbone owns certain working interests in the Orogrande properties. Recital 2 states, McCabe Petroleum Corporation, aka MPC, is also wholly owned by the owner Gregory McCabe, and owes NextBridge Hydrocarbon $165,238 through a participation and development agreement with Hudspeth Oil Corporation, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of NextBridge. Note Hudspeth Oil Corporation is different from Hudspeth Operating LLC, both are subsidiaries owned by NextBridge. Recital 3 is very important in understanding this merger. It states that Hudspeth Operating LLC is wholly owned by a wholly owned subsidiary of the company NextBridge Hydrocarbons. Meaning NextBridge owns Hudspeth Operating LLC through another subsidiary, which later on I found out to be NBH MergeCo LLC. Recital 4 states that the owner McCabe has agreed to make financing to NextBridge of 5% unsecured promissory note dated as of the 21st of December 2022. Recital 5 states that by this agreement, 1. Hudspeth Operating LLC, Wolfbone Investments Corporation, and MPC will merge in accordance to the Texas Business Organization Code, the TBOC. 2. From this merger, Wolfbone and MPC will continue as surviving entities. 3. Following the merger, Wolfbone shall become a direct and wholly owned subsidiary of NextBridge Hydrocarbons Incorporated. 4. In consideration of this merger, NBH will issue to the owner McCabe 56,297,638 common stock in full satisfaction of the Orogrande obligations. On page 65 of the S1 form, NBH explains how the merger is occurring, stating the following. 1. On the 21st of December 2022, we entered into an agreement and plan of merger with Hudspeth, Wolfbone, MPC and Gregory McCabe, pursuant to which in a series of transactions the Orogrande properties, as defined in the merger agreement, owned by Wolfbone will be assigned to Hudspeth. 2. The merger shall be completed, whereby we will form NBH MergeCo LLC, MergeCo, in order to cause Hudspeth to assign all of its rights under the merger agreement to MergeCo, and MergeCo will assume Hudspeth's obligations under the merger agreement. Then Hudspeth, or MergeCo, as its assignee, Wolfbone and MPC shall merge with each of Wolfbone and MPC as surviving entities, and finally, Wolfbone will become our direct and wholly owned subsidiary. Prior to the merger taking place, NBH had 4 subsidiaries, which are Torchlight Energy Incorporated, Torchlight Hazel LLC, Hudspeth Oil Corporation, and Hudspeth Operating LLC. Prior to the merger taking place, Greg McCabe had the following companies under his control: Wolfbone Investments LLC, McCabe Petroleum Corporation, and Magdalena Royalties LLC. After the merger, he loses ownership over Wolfbone, but retains MPC and Magdalena. All other assets, rights, commitments and liabilities of Wolfbone get assumed by MPC, making Wolfbone holding only consolidated Orogrande assets and interest. At the same time, Hudspeth merged into Wolfbone and ceased existence. It assigned all of its rights to NBH MergeCo LLC. Hudspeth board members replaced Wolfbone board members, and Wolfbone survived the merger to become a subsidiary of NextBridge Hydrocarbons, wholly owned through MergeCo LLC subsidiary. MPC is a surviving entity through the merger. McCabe retains ownership of MPC, however MPC obtained all of Wolfbone's liabilities, making Wolfbone holding only the consolidated Orogrande interests and assets. These diagrams are my interpretation of the merger. The S1 also provides a chart of the parties holding revenue and working interest as of September 2022. However, as of this agreement, the 21st of December 2022, NBH board has now informed investors that this merger has increased its working interest by 22.6% and revenue interest by 17% for an aggregate working interest of 89.12 for 9% owned through their subsidiaries. They are now also engaged in negotiations to obtain an additional 10.8251% working interest in the Orogrande project from the other owners in exchange for proportionate amount of our common stock. If you look at the chart of ownership as of September 2022, the only other parties holding a working interest in Orogrande are promissory note holders from March 2020 agreement with Torchlight Energy Resources and an unrelated party, which combined hold just 8.5% working interest. ORI refers to overriding royalty interest, which is interest in oil and gas produced at the surface, free of the expense of production. The NBH board has informed investors remaining 10.8251% working interest, not revenue interest, is owned by other owners, which they are engaged in negotiations to obtain. Magdalena Royalties LLC, which is wholly owned by Greg McCabe, owns a 4.5% revenue interest and University Lands owns a 20% revenue interest. The NBH board is attempting to obtain the remaining 10.8251% working interest. If obtained, the NextBridge will own the full 100% working interest but not the full revenue interest. As per the chart, they now own around 68.625% revenue interest. Greg McCabe now owns 31.2% of the 221,770,359 issued and outstanding NBH common stock. Meaning, Greg McCabe owns 69.19 million in total, of which 56 million were given to him as part of the merger agreement, meaning McCabe had 12,894,714 MMTLP shares that turned into NBH shares prior to the merger. So if we add Greg McCabe's 56 million consideration to the 165.5 million preferred Series A shares, we get the total issued and outstanding shares of 221.7 million shares. Then if we add the 40 million shares that will be issued to Roth Capital and subtract the total from the 500 million authorized shares, we will then get the total 238.2 million remaining shares that the NBH board can negotiate with to obtain the remaining 10% working interest and outstanding revenue interests. In summary, 1. NBH has issued an outstanding 221,770,359 shares. 2. Greg McCabe owns 31.2% of the issued and outstanding shares. 3. All Orogrande assets and interest got merged and vested into Wolfbone Investments LLC. 4. Wolfbone Investments LLC is now a subsidiary wholly owned by subsidiary NBH MergeCo LLC, which is wholly owned by NBH Incorporated. 5. Hudspeth management replaced and removed Wolfbone's management. 6. Hudspeth assigned its rights and obligations to NBH MergeCo LLC and ceased operation. 7. Greg McCabe no longer owns Wolfbone Investments LLC. 8. All liabilities, debts, other assets aside from Orogrande, and commitments got vested into MPC through the merger. 9. MPC is solely owned by Gregory McCabe. 10. NBH owns 89.124% working interest in Orogrande assets. 11. NBH issues 40 million shares to Roth Capital to find accredited institutional buyers. 12. NBH is negotiating to obtain the remaining 10.8251% working interest from other parties using the remaining 238.2 million available authorized shares. This concludes the review of the merger agreement. If you got anything out of this video, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Nothing in my videos is legal or financial advice. It is strictly entertainment and my personal opinions, speculations, and interpretations. My videos are made for you to contrast your own understand to mine and to encourage more discourse.